How's it going, everyone? Welcome. Julio Gonzalez here. Let's go to now explore about the React Native. This intermediate React Native. This is just a dive deep course as a way to understand now not only is the fundamentals of React Native, which is something that we discuss in another video, in another course, in another series, in another season, and that is the TLDR is understand that React Native is this library that allow us is to now using React build user interface that by passing through a rendering engine is going to now allow us to build React, in this case, mobile applications by targeting a specific platform, by targeting platform specific native, whether it's in OS, the iOS, or Android. So how do things work? This is a very interesting question because by exploring the architecture, especially on React Native, which is quite similar in terms of the series of steps that it needs to be done. For example, in React, because this is a library for building user interface, and the idea here is that by passing from the trigger, render and commit phase, and give you now the ability to update state change that happens on the UI, and then re-render that applications or re-render those small UI components. So because of that, now in React Native, since it's using the Fabric, this React Native rendering system that allows that to now pass through several phases. All right, the first is the render, where all of the render logic will come. In other words, is the React logic is transformed into a React element tree, which is a JavaScript object that contains all of this input and props and data in this JSON-like objects that is used to convert that into a React shadow tree, which is now this representations of the view in C++. And then on the commit phase, when now it promote this tree to be a candidate to be mounted by also now computing is the layout, so where this element is going to be rendered on the screen. And if you can imagine, it's like you are trying to call your friend and then now recreate a paint. Oh my god, that's very wild. It's like you're trying to recreate the Mona Lisa over cell phone. Now, exactly, because this is quite complex. They use now Yoga, a particular library that allows them to calculate is the position of these elements and the dimension of this. So once all of that is done, then on the mount phase is where now it take this React element, React shadow tree, and then convert it into a host view 3, which is the directive, the native directive 3, we're now allowed them to render all of these components on those platforms. So all of this can happen in different threads, whether it's on the main threads or the JavaScript thread. The main threads only happen. The main thread is only is used for manipulating is the host view 3, whereas on the JavaScript thread is when the render logic is rendering and the layout and the calculation, the layout calculation happens. So why this is important? Because when you are trying to develop these applications using React Native, at least to understand now first, we can use this we use Expo Go to kind of accelerate is and get the development and get our hands dirty when it comes to develop all of this kind of application. Now, because in that previous course, which is something that I have here on the React Native course version 3, which is taught by Kari Kramen. Shout out to Kari Kramen. Jesus fucking Christ. Completely. Software engineer at Expo right now. Where here we explore is now the technique, the strategy and technique that help us to build this React Native. And by building is a React Native application, which is a shopping list and a task scheduler, right? We dive deep into the first, how you set up your React Native environment using Expo, such as ESLint and Prettier. And then now we are using also a TypeScript for that. And how you can now is create your applications and how you can now use the core feature that React exposed to us, such as view, text, the scroll view, the flat list, as well as the navigation, and how we can, and how in React Native we have three types of navigation: stack, modal, and tabs. How you can actually do some nested navigation using now Expo Router, which unlike other solutions like React Native navigations, where because this is not quite intuitive, with Expo Router, which is a wrapper of this React Native, it makes much more intuitive how you're going to look at your screens, like your route. This is also this is an idea that was borrowed from the Next, and where you can you define is you have this file-based routing systems or navigation systems, so file-based routing system. We also look at how can we do that, how can we actually go from one to another, starting to use now these Expo libraries. And then when it comes to now explore is advanced, or when it comes to explore is or to enhance the user experience by looking at how you can now is use, for example, the local storage using the async storage and the how do you put it and touchable to enhance now is the touchable area that you want to let the users go with, touch it, okay. Also pressable instead of a button, and how we can create now this shopping list that actually is mimicking this behavior as a way to tap in here. Let me actually show you that quickly. I don't want to dive deep too much because what I really care in today's video is to go. This is on Android. Let me show you this. Yeah, Android here. Because I want to now is dive deep into that. We also look at notifications, as you can see here. Yep. And since with React Native, for example, like this, we also add the ability to not only search in or add in elements into the shopping list, and also provide this kind of UI experience of your elements, okay, with touchable, exactly, and also implement some models to show now this warning, and also implement now this, as I mentioned before, the local storage or async storage, which is a key value, unencrypted, persistent storage. how can we use is the um, for example, push-in notifications. Okay. And what is the subtle difference between this type of notification? You have remote notification or push notification, which is something that happens on the server, and then you somehow the server have a push ID of the device, and then you send that to our Firebase or Apple servers and redirects that to the proper server, because this is something that that is not easily workshoppable. Well, we look now at how can we do is at least to implement these in-app notifications and understand that, well, despite that those the Expo docs give you some logic, understand what is the logic that they give it to you as a way to know what is the as a way to know what is as a way to know what is the the mechanism that is using, for example, iOS and Android to handle this in-app notifications. So in Android, you have something called a specific channel that is going to allow you to do that, where in iOS, you don't have that kind of stuff. This notification doesn't work on the simulator, at least not in Expo Go, all right? From newer versions. And also, now, how can we enhance the device interactions, such as using haptics for this vibration notification or this touchable notifications, as well as how you can now, for example, improve the celebration, and how you can now add a loading indicator like this, and how can we implement this particularly time scheduler, and some confetti for that. So this was just a briefly quick overview of all the fundamentals as a way to understand now React Native behind the scenes, and therefore build something that is useful, at least for yourself. So here we have is the motorcycle wash do in, and there you got it. Now, so because this course is focused more in how you can now is create your application, not using Expo Go, but running the development build. Again, something that we're gonna look at that. So it's now produce production ready apps using React Native and Expo Go in iOS and Android. So the thing that I want to explore here is more like a dive deep into the routing navigation with Expo. Sustain, which is a state management tool, which is perhaps is a lightweight version of Redux. Okay. UI pattern like full screen models and deep linking. This is a concept that I also want to explore here with the routing navigation. Implement features like image selections and quick actions as a way to understand how these different pieces fit on the puzzle. And the package and deploy your app store with proper metadata, splash screen, and icons, which is the deployment here. So publish your app. So this is the 5 topics that I want to actually get into this. All right, so far we look at the introduction. I'm not gonna dive deep into this. I already made that. And kind of how you need to set up your environment as a way that everything work as expected, right? So once we already did that by setting our environments, at least with Xcode, exactly, we're gonna use the latest version 0.73. We already have that Xcode open. Yep, we check that, right? We install all of this, and there are some suggestions they tell you configuring your environments. Starting from React Native 0.769, it is possible to configure the Xcode environment using x.co.env file provided by the template. x.co.env file contains an environment variable to export the path of the node executable in node binary variables. This is a suggested approach to decouple the build infrastructure from the system versions of Node. Interesting. You should customize this variable with your own path on your own Node version manager. If it differs from the default, okay, if it's different from the default, so on top of this, it is possible to add any other environment variable to and your source, the xcode.env file. If your build script faces, if you need to run a script that requires some specific environment, this is suggest approach. In our case, we don't need to run specific. We just going to run is only once. This is the suggested approach. It allows you to decouple the build phase from a specific environment. If you're already using NVN, a command which helps you install, switch to different versions and sell, you might want to move the code that initiates NVNs to your source or show as file to help Xcode find your node executable. Okay, to separate is the build phase and decouple the build phase from the specific environment. As a way to load this per season. That makes a lot of sense. 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 Okay. Okay. Good, good. Now, so after all, we know how to set up your environment here. Let me follow me along here with React Native here. There you got it. Okay. Wait, what? Where is it? Enterprise right alone. No, it is planting. There you go. Okay, here we go. So, well, what we did so far is just to understand now the architecture as a way to look at the folder structure. How we need to define is our app router here as a way to get our hands dirty into the project setup. So let's get into this.
We're going to install a navigation library. So React Native doesn't come with navigation by default, so we need to choose one, and we're going to use Expo-router for navigation. Expo-router is a file system.
Exactly. So Expo-router is a file. This is so please we're going to run this command. This is just to verify that this will work as expected. All right. What is doing npmx is a command executor that let you execute node commands or node package without installing that. That's what npmx is doing there. Why this is useful? Because instead of you download locally, you can now is execute these node packages locally, and if those and if it's not there, it's going to now fire up the network and then runs that. Good. So this is exactly what it's doing. It's actually doing that network request and then execute that on our machine, so we don't have to install that CLI locally. This is great. Now, we already installed this using now TypeScript, and how convenient it is for us to generate that. We also save those changes on the navigation. Okay. We also set up the linting process here. From SDK, Expo allows you to set up the linter and formatting with a single command. This setup linter, which is something that is gonna happen a lot, is a command that we can use for lint expo. You know, US lint and prettier expo. With a single command. So inside the project, you can run lints. Okay. Exactly. So you can follow these recommendations that you're going to follow for SDK 51 and above. You're going to use that. You might wonder, how do I know about what is the SDK version that we're using in Expo? Well, you can take a look at this here, right? So because React Native usually will publish some, so the LTS, the LTS, which is the long-term support, or the development cycle of React Native is roughly twice a year, all right? When they ship new particularly codes and functionality to keep up with the new trends and issues they have. So because of that, now Expo needs to also keep up the pace with that. That's one of the reasons why Expo has this SDK or this version control, because it depends on React Native. So the idea of this is React Native focus exclusively on providing its core features to such as those native directive bindings in some additional functionality. So for example, improve the rendering of your application and the accessibility or the communication between React and the native directive, among other stuff. So Expo say, hey, we're going to now provide a wrapper around React Native to improve the developing experience. So in other words, is make it much more easy to provide routing to React Native applications, as well as the navigation and publishing your app to the relevant store. Okay, with that, okay, and I think this is something quite important to do, especially if you want to actually, if you are selling this idea or if you're trying to now explain to somebody else why all of this happened the way it is. This is how you can actually do. Okay, good. Now let's get into this. All right. Yes, configuration. You can also install here prettier. As you can see, this is part of the development process. Here in this section on more, okay, using ESLink and Prettier, using Next, LogRocket, Sentry, BoxNet, build apps for TV, using TypeScript, using in-app purchase, so on and so forth. Okay. So we already installed all of this. If it's not, we can just copy and paste this. As you can see, we're using is now Expo install to install all of these libraries. In the above configuration, you can use Prettier and Prettier Warn if you prefer the formatting issues. We already set up that on the ESLint, okay, along with some recommendation from Cathy Kremen, okay. ESLink is not updating in VS Code. Troubleshooting. ESLink server by running the command ESLink restore ESLink server from the command palette. ESLink is slow. ESLink can be slow to run on large projects. The easy way to speed up is to add ESLink ignore for this. That's interesting. We can add this ESLink ignore file. That's very, very interesting. ESLink ignore, and add now these two folders here. That is Expo and no models. Okay. Migrations to ESLink config Expo. And as you can see, this is quite interesting about Expo here. You know, because we are running is npmx Expo. The thing here, why we're using is Expo to install this. So let's get into this. npm expo. Let me see if this actually command. Is this help command exists? So Expo say, hey, you can store, export, install, customize, config, and serve. Oh, it makes quite a lot of sense here.
System-based navigation library, and it's built on top of React Navigation. So if you're familiar with Next.js, then or libraries like that, then you probably already understand what file system-based routing is. But basically, it means that your file system defines the screens that exist in your app.
Is that the industry standard as Expo router, or are there other routers that have generally been used in production applications?
So there's 3 navigation libraries for React Native. There's React Navigation, there's React Native Navigation, which I think is less popular these days, and then there's Expo Router, which is built on top of React Navigation. So the main 2 ones that are used right now, as far as I'm aware, are Expo Router and then React Navigation. React Navigation if you don't want file system-based routing, but Expo Router is the future, in my biased opinion. So I've linked to the Getting Started docs here, and I've also copied the steps that we need to do. So first we install a bunch of libraries. So
exactly. But all of this is just to now set up the navigation.
So we need Expo Router. There's React Native Safe Area Context. So this is to have the safe area on your screen. So this is handled automatically by the navigation library. So on iOS, you know, when you have the bottom and top of your screen, you can't actually put content because you have your status bar and your little notch. So this protects against that. So you're only putting content in the visible area. There's React Native Screens. There's Expo-linking.
Exactly.
So this is because one of the good things.
Okay, all of this is something that we already installed and we did it. But I wanted to recap, you know, to understand this. So from SDK 50 and above, you want to install all of this stuff here, right? And this is quite interesting because we are using is not jar, the model, the package manager, but we are using is now Expo. Why is this? I think Cathy Kremen mentioned that, but this is to now keep in sync the library versions with that Expo SDK, so everything works as expected. There's a lot of mechanisms going on behind the scenes. Yes. So here we are installing is Expo Router, React Native Safe Area, context is a way to now provide that way to rendering that element. React Native screens, Expo-linking, something that I'm not quite familiar with.
Like amazing things actually about React navigation is that you get deep linking basically for free. It's a side effect. It's a benefit of doing file system based.
Mm-hmm. So let's get into this. And there you go. Okay, exactly. We already set up all of this, and also that. Then the navigation, installing and configuring Expo router as it is. Okay, and there you got it. So Expo-link make deep linking fairly intuitive since it is a file-based routing system. Therefore, you can easily look at them. What in the F is deep linking? Let's get into this. Let's get into this, shall we? Absolutely. Absolutely. Deep linking. Please give it to me on English. Yep, that's right. In the context of World Wide Web, deep linking is the use of a hyperlink that link to a specific, generally searchable or index piece of web content on a website. Rather than the website homepage. Oh. Holy. Okay, this is to actually get access to a specific resource. Oh my god. Court ruling. At the beginning of 2006, in case between the search engine Bixby and job site Naukri, the Delhi High Court in India prohibited Bixby.com from deep linking to Naukri. The most important and widely cited U.S. opinion on deep linking are the Ninth Circuit ruling in Kelly versus Arriba Soft Company and Perfect 10 Inc. versus Amazon Inc. In both cases, the court exonerated the use of deep linking. In the second of these cases, the court explained, speaking of defendant of Google, who preferred 10 has also sued, while linking is not a copyright infringement under the U.S. law. Google does not display a copy of a full-size infringement photography image for purpose of the Copyright Act when Google frame in link image that appear on a user computer screen. Because Google computers do not store the photographic image, Google does not have a copy of this image for purpose of the copyright. In other words, Google does not have any material object in which a work is fixed and from which the work can be perceived, reproduced, or otherwise communicated, and thus cannot communicate a copy. Instead of communicating a copy of the image, Google provides HTML instructions that direct user browser for a website publisher computer that store the full-size photography image. Providing this HTML instruction is not equivalent to showing a copy. Exactly, you are providing is a reference. First, the HTML instructions are lines of text, not a photographic image. Second, HTML instructions do not themselves cause infringe image to appear in the user computer screen. But in any case, deep linking. Websites owner who do not want to search engine to deep link or want them only to index specific page can request so using the robot exclusion standard. Okay, people who favor deep linking often feel that content owners who do not provide a robots.txt file are implying by default they do not object to deep linking either by search engine or others. People against deep linking often claim that content owners may be unaware of the robot exclusion standard or may not use robots.txt for other reasons. Sites other than search engine can also deep link in the content of the other site, and some questions the relevance of the robot is it is. So deep linking, it has its own controversy when it comes to see if that is a copy or not. But this is a hyperlink that link to a specific, generally searchable or indexed piece of web content on the website. So there's a lot of things going on. You know, what is a deep linking? You might wonder, you might ask. If you don't, I do that for you. What is a deep linking? Is the use of hyperlink is the use of hyperlink to exactly is the use of hyperlink that link a specific that links to a specific generally that link to a specific generally searchable content or index, generally searchable or indexed content on a website. You know, you can have access to that generally searchable or indexed content of a website. In our case, we can now have access to this index context to our router. So in our case, to our router index. That makes a lot of sense.
Routing. You don't need to configure the routes because they are implicit from the file system.
You don't need to configure the routes because they are implicit. And the other is that file-based navigation. So by setting up here to use Expo router entry, we're essentially telling to our app that the root of our app will be the app folder and does additional stuff to pass the initial screen for us. So file-based routing. Okay. You don't need to configure exactly. So you don't need to configure your route because they are explicit in your folder structure.
So deep linking for the first time in
So you don't need to configure your route because they're explicit in your file structure, in your folder structure. And deep linking for the first time in React Native
becomes, I don't want to say easy, but I'm kind of want to say easy. And we also have Expo constants and an Expo.
So, exactly. So, deep linking, this ability to use the hyperlink to go to a generally searchable or index web content, web content on a website, but in our case is to a router index. But since we don't need to configure this router index because it is explicit on the folder structure, so deep linking is is huge. So deep linking is huge since we can now see the routing system at a glance. That's what happened.
Status bar. Now we need
Mm-hmm.
to set up the entry point of our app. So if we go to the
So that'll be all for this video. Take care. Bye bye.